Two people wake up at 6:15 in the morning. Same city, same salary, same kind of apartment, same calendar packed with meetings they did not create. One of them feels like life is slowly closing in. The other feels strangely calm, not because they are rich, not because they have escaped yet, but because in their mind something has already changed. And this is the part most people miss. The rat race does not begin when you get a job. It begins when your brain starts believing that the job is the only safe place to exist, that your paycheck is oxygen, that your identity is your title, that free time is something you earn only after exhaustion, and that leaving the system means risking everything. But some people quietly escape. No dramatic resignation, no viral post, no "I quit my job to follow my dreams" speech. They just begin thinking differently. They start making decisions that look small from the outside, but inside their mind, those decisions are breaking the cage. And by the time everyone else notices, they are already gone. So what is different about these people? Why do some stay trapped for decades, even with talent and ambition, while others slowly, quietly, almost invisibly build a life with more control? The answer is not just money, it is psychology. And once you see the pattern, you may never look at work the same way again. Welcome to The Prime Investor. On this channel, we explore the psychology behind money, work, freedom, and the decisions that quietly shape our lives. Today, we're talking about a question millions of people never stop to ask. Why do some people spend their entire lives running in the rat race, while others quietly find a way out? By the end of this video, you'll understand the hidden psychological patterns that keep people trapped, the mental shifts that help others escape, and why the difference has far less to do with income than most people think. Let's begin. Most people think the rat race is a place, an office, a commute, a boss, a paycheck. But psychologically, the rat race is not a place. It is a loop. You trade your time for survival, then you use what little energy you have left to recover from the trade. Then you wake up and do it again. And the loop becomes familiar. Familiar becomes normal. Normal becomes identity. And identity becomes a prison that does not need guards, because the person trapped inside starts defending it. They say things like, "This is just how life works." They say, "At least I have stability." They say, "I'll think about freedom later." But later keeps moving, like a door at the end of a hallway that gets farther away every time they walk toward it. The people who escape are not necessarily fearless. In fact, many of them are terrified, but they relate to fear differently. They do not treat fear as a stop sign. They treat it as information. And that single difference changes everything. Because the average person asks, "What if this fails?" But the person who escapes eventually asks a darker question: "What if this never changes?" That is the first crack in the system. Not confidence, not motivation, a confrontation with the cost of staying the same. At around 2, let's go deeper, because the first psychological difference is how they perceive time. Most people are trained to measure life in money. How much do I earn? How much can I afford? How much is in the account? But people who escape the rat race develop a more dangerous awareness. They start measuring life in time, and once the brain begins doing that, everything looks different. A higher salary no longer feels automatically impressive because they ask, "How much of my life does this cost?" The promotion does not just look like success. It looks like more meetings, more responsibility, more availability, more invisible ownership of problems they did not choose. Imagine someone named Daniel. Daniel gets a raise. Everyone congratulates him. His parents are proud. His friends say, "You're killing it." But Daniel notices something strange. He earns more money now, but his Sundays are ruined by Monday. He cannot enjoy dinner without checking messages. He has a better title, but less attention for the people he loves. On paper, Daniel is moving up. Psychologically, he is disappearing. And this is where the escape mindset begins. Not when a person hates work, but when they realize success can be a trap if it buys money by selling awareness. The trapped mind thinks, I need more income. The escaping mind thinks, I need more control over my hours, attention, and energy. That's a completely different game, and most people never switch games. They simply try to win harder at the one that is already consuming them. The second difference is identity. This one is subtle, and it may be the strongest lock on the cage. Most people do not just have a job, they become the job. They say, I am a manager, I am an accountant, I am a nurse, I am a software engineer. And there's nothing wrong with skill or profession, but the brain is always listening. When a role becomes an identity, leaving that role feels like death. Not physical death, social death, ego death, the death of the story you have been telling people for years. This is why some people stay in jobs they hate, not because they cannot imagine another income stream, but because they cannot imagine another version of themselves. The employee mindset is not about employment. It's about psychological permission. It says, someone else must choose me before I can move. Someone else must hire me, promote me, approve me, validate me, give me a seat, tell me I am qualified. The people who escape slowly break this dependency. They stop waiting to be picked. They start building proof, quietly, at night, on weekends, in the small pockets of time most people give away to distraction. Maybe Maria works a normal job, but every evening she spends 45 minutes learning how to solve a problem for a small group of people. At first, nothing happens. No applause, no money, no breakthrough, just boredom, doubt, and a laptop glowing in the dark room. But something is changing. Maria is no longer only an employee. She is becoming someone who creates leverage, someone who can learn without permission, someone who can produce value outside the system that pays her. That identity shift comes before the escape, always. The outside changes after the inside stops asking for approval. The third difference is how they process uncertainty. The average brain hates uncertainty. It would rather choose predictable discomfort than unpredictable possibility. This is not weakness. This is biology. The brain is designed to keep you alive, not free. So when you think about changing your life, the brain does not show you the best-case scenario. It shows you embarrassment, debt, judgment, failure, a blank future. It says, stay here. At least we understand this pain. That sentence is the psychology of the rat race. At least we understand this pain. People stay because familiar stress feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. But those who escape start studying uncertainty instead of worshiping stability. They ask, what exactly am I afraid of? Not in a vague way, specifically. Am I afraid of losing income, being judged, starting over, looking foolish, not knowing what to do next? When fear becomes specific, it becomes smaller. A monster in the dark becomes a problem with edges, and problems with edges can be handled. A person trapped in fear says, I can't risk it. A person moving toward freedom says, how can I reduce the risk? That is the difference. They do not jump blindly, they build bridges, savings, skills, side income, relationships, proof of demand, a lower monthly lifestyle. They do not romanticize risk, they redesign it. And that leads to the fourth difference, comfort addiction. This one is uncomfortable because it hides behind normal life. Most people think they are stuck because life is hard, but often they are stuck because life is just comfortable enough, Not fulfilling, not exciting, not aligned, just comfortable enough to delay change. The paycheck arrives, the subscriptions renew, the weekend brings a small reward, a meal out, a show to binge, a purchase that creates a little spark, and the brain says, "See, we're okay." But okay can be dangerous because okay numbs urgency. The rat race does not always feel like suffering. Sometimes it feels like being mildly dissatisfied for 10 years, and that is what makes it so effective. If the pain were unbearable, more people would leave, but the system gives just enough comfort to keep people from questioning the price. The people who escape begin noticing the pattern. They see how exhaustion creates consumption. They work all week, feel drained, then buy convenience and entertainment to recover. Then they need the job even more to pay for the recovery from the job. It is a loop. Work creates stress. Stress creates spending. Spending creates dependency. Dependency creates more work, and the cage gets stronger. Quiet escape begins when a person stops using comfort as anesthesia. Not all comfort, but unconscious comfort, the kind that prevents them from listening to the truth. They begin choosing strategic discomfort, learning when tired, saving when they want to spend, building when no one is watching, saying no when approval would feel easier, and slowly their tolerance changes. They become less addicted to ease, more addicted to agency. The fifth difference is systems thinking. This may be the most practical psychological shift. Job thinking says, how do I get paid for my time? Systems thinking says, how do I create something that works without all of my time? That question is the beginning of escape, because the rat race is powered by linear exchange. 1 hour in, 1 hour paid, stop working, stop earning. And for many people, that becomes normal because it is all they have seen. But the quiet escapers become obsessed with systems, not because they are greedy, because they are tired of being the entire engine. They look at a skill and ask, can this become a product? They look at knowledge and ask, can this become content? They look at a repeated task and ask, can this be automated? They look at a problem and ask, can I solve this once and distribute it many times? That is not just business strategy. It is a psychological rebellion against being consumed. Take someone who edits videos for a company. A job thinker says, I edit videos for a paycheck. A systems thinker says, I understand why videos hold attention. I can package this, teach it, build templates, serve clients, create assets. Same skill, different mental model. One person sees labor, the other sees leverage, and leverage is terrifying to people who were trained to believe income must always be earned through personal exhaustion. The sixth difference is delayed gratification versus instant stability bias. Most people say they want freedom, but what they really want is freedom with no awkward middle, no uncertainty, no temporary drop in status, no boring practice period, no nights where the results are invisible. They want the harvest without the season where nothing seems to grow. The brain loves immediate stability. A guaranteed paycheck now feels more real than a possible better life later. So the average person chooses the visible reward, even if it keeps them dependent. The escaping person learns to respect invisible progress. This is difficult because for a long time their life may look the same job, same commute, same routine, but internally they are making deposits into a future identity. They read differently, they spend differently, they use weekends differently, they choose friends differently. They stop asking, did this pay off today? And start asking, what does this make possible in 2 years? That question separates people because the rat race trains the brain to think in pay periods. Freedom requires thinking in systems, seasons, and compounding. At first, the results are almost insulting. A tiny audience, a tiny investment account, a tiny side project, a tiny skill improvement. But the brain of the escaper has learned something the trapped brain rejects. Small things become dangerous when repeated with intention. The seventh difference is social conditioning. This is the invisible audience in everyone's head. Most people are not only afraid of failure, they are afraid of being seen trying. They imagine the comments, "Who do you think you are? Is this another phase? Why don't you just be grateful? What if it doesn't work?" And so they shrink their dreams to fit the comfort level of the people around them. The rat race is not maintained only by companies or bills. It is maintained by social approval. Do what is recognizable. Choose the safe title. Stay on the normal path. Be ambitious, but not too strange. Dream, but only in ways that sound respectable at dinner. The people who quietly escape stop asking the crowd for emotional permission. They do not necessarily argue. They do not announce every move. They simply become more private with their transformation. This is why the escape is quiet, because early freedom is fragile. If you expose it too soon, other people's fear can infect it. Someone starts building a small business and immediately tells 5 friends. One laughs, one warns them, one asks uncomfortable questions, one projects their own regret, and suddenly the idea feels weaker, not because the idea changed, but because the nervous system interpreted disapproval as danger. People who escape learn to protect the early version of their new life. They share less, build more, let results speak later. And now we reach the turning point, the psychological switch. It is not when they quit. It is not when they make their first dollar outside a job. It is not when they have the perfect plan. The switch happens when they stop seeing freedom as an event and start seeing it as a practice. That is the moment. The trapped mind says, "One day I will escape." The free mind says, "Today I will behave like someone who is becoming free." That shift sounds small. It is not, because now freedom is no longer waiting in the future. It is inside today's choices. Do I spend this money to impress people or to buy options? Do I spend this hour numbing out or building capacity? Do I keep saying yes out of fear or protect my attention? Do I need everyone to understand, or can I move quietly? The person has not escaped externally yet, but psychologically, they have defected. They are no longer fully owned by the system. And from the outside, this can look boring. They are still at work, still attending meetings, still answering emails, but something is different. Their job is no longer their entire identity. It is a funding mechanism, a training ground, a temporary structure, a place they are using, not a place that defines them. That is when the cage weakens, not because the bars disappear, but because the person stops mistaking the bars for the whole world. Now we need to destroy 3 myths that keep people trapped. The first myth is, you need luck. Luck exists, but most people use luck as a way to avoid studying behavior. When someone quietly escapes, outsiders see the moment it worked. They do not see the years of reduced spending, the failed experiments, the uncomfortable learning, the rejected offers, the tiny decisions that created optionality. What looks like luck is often preparation meeting a moment that unprepared people could not use. The second myth is, you need to quit your job immediately. This is one of the most dangerous ideas online because it turns freedom into a dramatic performance. For some people, quitting may eventually make sense, but psychologically, the need for a dramatic exit can become another trap. It makes people believe that if they cannot jump today, they cannot move at all. That is false. Quiet escape is often built while still employed. The job funds the runway. The job reveals problems. The job teaches discipline. The job shows what kind of life you do not want. The goal is not reckless rebellion. The goal is increasing control. The third myth is you need a perfect idea. No, you need a better relationship with feedback. Most people wait for certainty before they begin, but certainty usually arrives after action, not before it. The brain wants a perfect idea because a perfect idea protects the ego. If the idea is perfect, you will not be embarrassed, you will not waste time, you will not have to adapt. But real escape is built through contact with reality. You try something, reality responds, you adjust, you try again. Over time, your thinking becomes sharper because it is no longer trapped inside imagination. The people who escape are not always smarter. They are often just more willing to let reality teach them without making every failure mean something about their worth. That is rare and powerful. By now, you may notice a pattern. Quiet escape is not a single decision. It's a psychological migration. From money obsession to time awareness, from identity dependence to self-authorship, from fear avoidance to risk design, from comfort addiction to agency, from job thinking to systems thinking, from instant stability to compounding, from approval seeking to quiet conviction. And here is the emotional truth underneath all of it. Most people do not stay in the rat race because they are lazy. They stay because the cage is built out of things that once protected them. A steady paycheck, a respectable title, a familiar routine, approval from people they love, predictability in a world that feels unstable. These things are not evil, they are comforting, but comfort becomes a problem when it asks for your whole life in return. The person who escapes does not necessarily reject work, they reject unconscious trade-offs. They stop saying yes without calculating the cost. They stop calling exhaustion ambition. They stop confusing being needed with being free. They stop measuring their life by how impressive it looks from the outside. And slowly, they begin building something quieter. A life with margins. A life where their attention belongs to them more often. A life where money is not the master, but a tool. A life where their nervous system is not constantly bracing for Monday. This is why the escape is quiet, because the deepest changes do not always make noise. Sometimes freedom begins with a person sitting alone at night looking at their calendar and finally admitting, I cannot keep living as a stranger to myself. Not with rage, not with drama, just honesty. And from that honesty, they make one different choice, then another, then another. They cancel the expense that was buying status. They learn the skill that was intimidating. They wake up earlier, not because hustle culture told them to, but because their future finally feels real. They stop explaining the dream to people committed to misunderstanding it. They become less available to distractions and more available to their own life. Months pass, maybe years, and one day the outside world catches up to the inside decision. They leave the job, or reduce their hours, or build independent income, or move somewhere quieter, or simply redesign life so the paycheck no longer controls every breath. People call it sudden. It was not sudden, it was invisible. That is the psychology of people who quietly escape the rat race. They do not start by asking, how do I become rich? They start by asking, what is owning me? And that question changes the brain. Because once you can name the thing that owns you, you can begin negotiating with it. Your bills, your habits, your fears, your need for approval, your identity, your comfort, your calendar, your assumptions. Freedom is not the absence of responsibility. It is choosing which responsibilities are worthy of your life. And the people who escape understand something most people avoid. If you do not design your life, your nervous system will adapt to a life you never chose. It will call stress normal. It will call numbness maturity. It will call lost time the price of being realistic. But there is another path, not easy, not instant, not guaranteed, but real. It begins quietly, with the decision to stop treating your life as something that happens after work, with the decision to stop asking fear for permission, with the decision to become the kind of person who builds options before they are needed. And maybe that is the real escape. Not quitting, not getting rich, not proving anyone wrong, but waking up one day and realizing your identity is no longer built around survival. You are no longer just enduring the week, no longer postponing yourself until retirement, no longer trading your attention for a version of success that leaves you empty. You are becoming someone who can choose. And once a person truly experiences that feeling, even in a small way, they cannot unfeel it. Because the rat race depends on one belief above all others, that you have no other option. The quiet escapers are dangerous because they stop believing that. They may still be afraid, they may still be learning, they may still be working the same job tomorrow morning, but inside the old story has cracked, and through that crack, something enters. Not motivation, not fantasy, a different identity. The identity of a person who is no longer waiting to be rescued. The identity of a person who does not need the world to understand before they begin. The identity of a person who knows that freedom is not found in one dramatic leap, but built in the private decisions no one applauds. So if two people earn the same salary, live in the same city, and wake up to the same alarm, one can still be trapped while the other is already on the way out. Because the real escape does not start in the bank account, it starts in the mind. And long before someone leaves the rat race physically, they leave it psychologically, quietly, deliberately, one decision at a time. If you found yourself somewhere in this video, you're not alone. Most people don't stay trapped because they're lazy, unintelligent, or unmotivated. They stay trapped because the habits, beliefs, and routines that once protected them slowly became the walls around them. The good news is that psychological cages are different from physical ones. Once you can see them, you can start questioning them. And once you start questioning them, you can begin building something different. Not at once, not overnight, one decision at a time. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to The Prime Investor for more deep dives into the psychology of money, work, investing, retirement, and the hidden forces that shape our financial lives. Thank you for watching, and remember, long before people change their circumstances, they change the way they think. I'll see you in the next video.